Y'all thought I was finished?
Hello, and welcome back to Football Barbie, where we talk about anything and everything football here. Would super appreciate if you could subscribe, like, comment, all of that fun stuff. And we're just going to keep it going with a continuous trend, and we're going to talk about fantasy football, and that is within quarterbacks. So let's talk about some fantasy football quarterback predictions. Now, if you just watched my last video, if you keep watching till the end, it'll show you the video that you can click on. But we talked about the top 2022 quarterbacks. I have done also the highest paid quarterbacks, but it's completely different because Mr. Kyler Murray was number 3, and I don't think Kyler Murray by far is in the top quarterback spot. So let's get started and talk about the top 2023 possible quarterbacks and how are they going to do. Is your team going to have the top quarterback? Let me know. If you think it should be different, please let me know that as well, and I would love to hear that from you. So starting at 1, obviously no surprise. If you watched the previous video, which you can, it is going to be Mr. Patrick Mahomes. So Patrick Mahomes was able to possibly have, now this is all predictions, so please let's not get that twisted. This is all prediction videos. It is going to be 619.5 passing attempts with 413.3 completions, 4,950 passing yards, so a little bit shy of the previous year, with 36 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 60.2.1 rushing attempts, with 342 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, it looks a little bit less than last year, but who knows? This year is going to be a little different. I think that the Chiefs and the Eagles do have a harder schedule than they did last year. So some of these teams are definitely going to come back and try to do really well. So number 2 as well is also the same with Mr. Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts from the Eagles. It's going to possibly have about 497 passing attempts with 319 completions, 3,827 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 158 rushing attempts, 812 rushing yards, and 10 rushing touchdowns. Now, as we all know, it's just very hard to predict these things. So it's very difficult. These are going off previous year statistics, everything like that. So you never know, but I do think that Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes will probably try to stay at the top. Now, we'll see what happens. Obviously, the NFC versus the AFC. Who's better? Who's not? You know, Patrick Mahomes dominates the AFC while Jalen Hurts is trying to do as best as he can for being only really about his, going on technically 4th season, but really 3rd full year as a quarterback. Now, obviously, there's also nobody's hurt. So going to number 3, the man himself, it would be Josh Allen from Buffalo. Now, we just got to make sure that Josh Allen, which we do have on here, does not throw any red zone interceptions this year. That is not good. You cannot be throwing red zone interceptions if you're up in this. So Josh Allen to have a possible 585 passing attempts with 367 completions with 4,296 passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, 15 interceptions. There we go again. He's got a lot of interceptions. Now, if he obviously is throwing the ball, you have a higher chance of getting the thing. But like I said, we don't need the red zone interceptions. With 114 rushing attempts, 659 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns. So now he's going to have some new rookies on his team. Obviously, they all do. But let's see what happens with these players and see if the Buffalo Bills can manage to be the top one in their division again. The next, we got Joe Burrow with the Bengals. So Joe Burrow did well. As we said, he doesn't have the best throwing arm in the league, but he does do well. He did have a lot of offensive players that were hurt last year, which should affect his numbers as well. He might have 601 passing attempts with 409 completions, with 4,623 passing yards. That would be a lot if he can maintain that. 33 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 71 rushing attempts, with 323 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Now, like I said, we all do like Joe Burrow. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's up there. But we'll see if he can maintain any form of status. Up next on our list, like I said, the highest paid quarterback now being that for the Ravens of Lamar Jackson. Now, he did extend that contract, and it is now the highest paid contract for any quarterback, beating out Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, coming in at possibly 492 passing attempts with 308 completions, 3,508 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 134 rushing attempts, 905 rushing yards, and 5 rushing touchdowns. Now, like I said, I think Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback. I think he definitely is somebody to run the ball. I think Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields are kind of, in a sense, trying to take after him. But this running of the game, you won't see any of your quarterbacks who have been in the league for a long time doing all this running, because obviously they know that it's a good chance that you could get hurt. And look what happened to Lamar Jackson last year. He got hurt in December with his knee, and then luckily now he is going to be able to come back. Next, you got Deshaun Watson with the Cleveland Browns. Now, obviously, we know Deshaun Watson was on Houston, and then a whole situation happened, which I'm not going to comment on because who knows what's true and what's not. But possibly having 525 passing attempts with 336 completions, 3,916 passing yards, with 26 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 100 rushing attempts, 511 rushing yards, and 5 rushing touchdowns. Now, like I said, if this is your fantasy and you are choosing teams or people or based on for your team, I would try to go off in these numbers and in this order as best as you can, because you just never know. You want who's going to be best overall for your team. Up next, coming in, as like I said, somebody else I feel like who's trying to mimic Lamar Jackson would be Justin Fields from Chicago. Now, Chicago really does need some wins. I don't know if their draft, honestly, was the best their draft could have been. I bet you if you're a Chicago fan, you're definitely not thinking that you're going to have the best year, but you're hoping for it, and you're hoping that you sure as heck do not get 3 wins or 4 wins, whatever you guys had last year. I'm pretty sure nobody wants that. I know the Eagles beat them. I watched it. I don't know how you guys deal with the freezing cold, because the game I went to in December was burger. But Mr. Justin Fields coming in at possibly 399 passing attempts, 245 completions, 2,866 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 161 rushing attempts, 1,045 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns. Let's see if Chicago can do much better than they did last year. God knows a lot of people, I'm sure, want that. Up next on the list, Justin Herbert with the Chargers. Now, Justin Herbert is definitely a great quarterback. I think the Chargers, he's been doing very well the past few seasons with the Chargers. So let's see what happens. Having possibly 646 passing attempts, 436 completions, 4,631 passing yards with 30 touchdowns passing, 14 interceptions. A lot of these people still have a lot of interceptions. Now, obviously, not all of them I think should be considered their fault, but unfortunately, they get it anyway. 58 rushing attempts, 187 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, we'll see if Chargers can do well this season. Let's see if they can make it to the postseason. That would be good. Up next, Mr. Kirk Cousins from the Vikings. Now, the Vikings were pretty on fire last year. Now, they do have Jefferson, and that is definitely one of their highlights for the division. They're also their tight end. If you watch that previous video, you'll see that the tight end is also did very good as well. So the Cousins possibly have 616 passing attempts with 411 completions, 4,576 passing yards, 30 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 30 rushing attempts, 89 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns for rushing. Now, like I said, I think the Vikings did really well last year. I'm sure if you're a Green Bay fan or you're a Chicago fan, you obviously do not want them to do well because you don't want them to rule your division. So it'll be interesting to see who's going to take it for this year. Up next, my team's rival coming in at Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Dak is also somebody else who threw a lot of interceptions this year, and I'm not really sure if that's going to be any different Like I said, some of it was due to bad throws, some of it was due to bouncing off, but he might come in at possibly 548 passing attempts with 357 completions, 4,079 passing yards, 29 passing touchdowns, 62 rushing attempts, the 14 interceptions, 271 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, I think that them losing Ezekiel Elliott, it might definitely hurt them. I think that he was really good. They do have CeeDee Lamb still. They do have some really other good people. If you watch previous videos, I will show you, the top, and they do definitely have some top players within the league. Now, it'll be interesting to see if that really actually does maintain that status. Can they do better or not? Coming in next, somebody else from the NFC East would be Daniel Jones with the New York Giants. I think the Giants did really well last year. That was the first year that I feel like they have done well in quite a few years, since probably the Eli Manning era. Coming in at 514 passing attempts, 334 completions, 3,441 passing yards, 21 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 108 rushing attempts, 660 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So at the end of the day, I know the Eagles did knock out the Giants in the playoffs, but the Giants did do very well, and they did the best that they could. I thought it was for at one point, it was really like a neck and neck, and the fact that they all got in minus the Commanders for the NFC East division really show that we weren't trying to be like this sucky division that we were like, was it 2 seasons ago when we were the worst division in the whole league? That was brutal. So up next, Mr. Geno Smith with Seattle Seahawks. Now, he does have a very interesting contract this year. He has to maintain and put up the numbers that he did last season. So he did for, possibly this season. We'll see if he's just able to. I think that he really just needed his stride, and they do have some really good players. Like if you watched it in my other previous videos, DK Metcalf by far is my favorite player on Seattle. Geno Smith coming in at possibly 538 passing attempts with 365 completions, 4,049 passing yards, 28 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 60 rushing attempts, 316 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, I do think that Geno Smith does have the capability to play. I think the problem before, he was basically a backup quarterback and never really had his chance to shine. So I think with the right players and being on a team with Pete Carroll, obviously we know Pete Carroll is an amazing coach. I think that he really does have a good chance. Up next, surprisingly enough, but in a sense, Mr. Sean Payton is now going to be the coach of the Denver Broncos. So you have Russell Wilson. Like I said, I think Russell Wilson, I don't know what happened last year personally, and I'm sure if you're a Denver fan, you completely agree with me. But I think with the possibility of having now Sean Payton on their team, having a good coach definitely is going to help by far. So we will see what happens. But I think Russell Wilson will have possibly 527 passing attempts, 331 completions with 3,933 passing yards, 24 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 65 rushing attempts, 338 rushing yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. I just hope that he doesn't throw like he's blind this year. Truly, that's what the worst part of him last year was, is he looked like he was throwing blind. Now, I thought he did great on Seattle. He moves to Denver. It's either Denver showed his flaws or he wasn't on the best team. So it's really one or the other, because poor Russell, poor Denver. Next on our list, we have Mr. Trevor Lawrence from Jacksonville. Now, this is going to probably be, his 3rd season as a rookie quarterback, and I think he's doing better and better as each year progresses. Last year, he did amazing compared to the year before, and he did manage to take his team into the postseason. This year, I think he's going to have 579 passing attempts, 377 completions with 4,020 passing yards, 26 passing touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 62 rushing attempts, 288 rushing yards with 4 rushing touchdowns. We will see. How good can this quarterback be? Can he maintain? They do need better players, though, on Jacksonville. It doesn't help their case that their team does not have the best of players. Like, they got good players, but do they really have a Super Bowl winning team? Probably not. Last on our list, the man who went from Green Bay to the Jets. I feel like Aaron Rodgers lost his spark on Green Bay. It was apparently his worst season last year, which is pretty crazy to think that the numbers he put up was his worst. But now he's going to Jets. I think that it's kind of like a breath of fresh air. Now, this will be the determination factor of, is Aaron Rodgers still a great quarterback, or did he lose his spark completely? Now look at Tom Brady. Obviously, last year, Tom Brady wasn't the normal Tom Brady that we've seen obviously dominate the Patriots. But Tom Brady took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and won them a Super Bowl, and they haven't won a Super Bowl in God knows how long. So, can Aaron Rodgers for the Jets do what Tom Brady did for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Who knows? But I think he might have 581 passing attempts with 368 completions, 4,203 passing yards, 27 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 33 rushing attempts, 119 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, like I said, he is going back to his previous coach that he has before with Nathaniel, was it Hackett? And then he's going to do very well. I mean, he definitely does need his weapons. I don't know if he apparently he wasn't connecting with the receivers for Green Bay anymore. I'm sure he was really upset that he lost to Davante Adams to the Raiders. I'm sure the Raiders are very happy that they gained Davante Adams because they definitely needed it. And that's going to be interesting to see because now they have Jimmy Garoppolo instead of Derek Carr. But like I said, I've talked to people, somebody who was who's a Raiders fan, completely off topic, but they said that, they liked Derek Carr, which I was honestly kind of surprised, not being a necessarily huge Raiders fan. Sorry, I'm an Eagles fan. But, I'm just kind of curious. Like, are you a Raiders fan? Who do we think? Who do we think is going to be the number one quarterback? Do you think Patrick Mahomes is going to keep dominating the league? Or do you think that your quarterback's going to step up and take over? So please let me know. Thank you for watching. I love you all, and ta-ta for now.